In this video, we are going to use Power BI to build a personal finance tracker while learning essential features of Power BI, such as importing and transforming data, exploring data with matrix visuals, and asking meaningful questions about our finance data. The first thing to do is to bring in our Excel data. Go to your Home tab and click on this Excel workbook icon. You will then be prompted to look for your Excel. You can download this sample data file from the description. Navigate to the file and double-click on it. After loading a while, you will be greeted with this window, allowing you to check the box to the left of Sheet 1. Selecting Sheet 1 will also give you a preview of the data to the right. We want to click on Transform Data after selecting Sheet 1. Clicking on Transform Data opens the Power Query Editor, which is the recommended platform for you to do your data transformation. On top, you will have all of the different tabs similar to other Microsoft products like Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. To the left, which is called the Queries pane, you have all of the queries or data that you brought into your Power BI file. To the right, you have your query settings. All of the data transformation steps are recorded under these applied steps. And in the middle, similar to Excel, you have a formula bar and a table representation of your data. Let's apply some data transformation before loading our Sheet 1 data into Power BI. The first is change type. Notice here in the applied steps, there is already a step called change type. But one of the columns does not have the intended data type. We have date and time for the date column. The time is irrelevant as the data was never intended to record time. Let's click on this icon just to the left of your date column header and choose the option date and choose replace current. Now we only see date and no longer see time. For category 1 to category 4, abbreviated as Cat 1 to Cat 4, the data type is correct, but they all represent category. Instead of calling them Cat 1 to Cat 4, it's more appropriate to rename them as Level 1 to Level 4. We can rename a column by double-clicking on the name of the column. It will then be highlighted and allow us to replace it. Change Cat 3 to Level 3 and Cat 4 to Level 4. Method refers to payment method. Let's also clarify by changing the name to payment method. The value has the correct data type, and for this last column, it says extracted 1st January 2026. If you open the Excel file, this is actually not a column of data. It is just a remark recorded at the very first row. Let's remove this column. To remove a column, right-click on the column header and choose the option Remove. Now that we have changed the data type, rename the different columns, and remove irrelevant columns, we are ready to load the data into Power BI. Go to your Home tab, and underneath that Home, click on this big icon, which stands for Close and Apply. The bigger the data, the longer it might take to load the data into your Power BI. In this case, the file is small, so the loading is fast. Now that the data has been loaded, let's quickly go through the UI of Power BI. To your right, These are called panes. You have your data pane, your visualization pane, and your filter pane. These panes can be expanded or collapsed using these arrow icons. Let's try collapsing our data pane. Once it's collapsed, we will still be able to see the wording data. Let's expand it back. Within your data pane, we see Sheet 1, which is the name of the worksheet that we have in the Excel file. Let's rename it into Duke's Expenses, assuming that the owner of the data is called Duke. You can rename it by either right-clicking and choose the rename option, or just double-click on the name. That is the pane to the right. To your left, you have access to a number of different views. In today's video, we will explore the first two, which is the report view, the default view in Power BI, where you build your visuals. And the second one, table view. In table view, you are able to see your data in table format. Similar in Excel, you have the option to sort your data by clicking on this arrow icon. Let's sort it by descending at the date column and also explore a filter function. Over at level 1, I only want to see asset. Once I click OK, similar to Excel, my current data only show asset. Towards the bottom here, it tells me how many are the total rows and how many rows are left after I filter it to asset. Now, if you no longer need to see the data filtered, just right-click on any of the column headers and choose the option Clear All Filters. If you choose Clear Filter instead, it will only clear the filter at that particular column that you have right-clicked on. Let's return to Report View and explore one of the visual matrix. Make sure you have your visualization pane open. Then click on this icon, which when you hover over says matrix. You will have a blank matrix. Your visualization pane also have rows, columns, and values filled well for you to put the different columns available in your data. Let's open our Duke's Expenses table and bring in all of the level columns to rows. As for the values filled well, let's bring in the column value. When you brought in the column value in the values filled well, it will automatically choose the aggregation sum of value. Now that we have our matrix, let's explore a little of the data. Let's say I want to find what are the categories that are of the highest expense. Using the human eye, I'm able to tell self as the highest, followed by asset, and then by F&B. It would be easier if I sort my sum of value column if I like to find what are the highest expenses. You can do so by clicking on the More Options icon, which are available when you selected your matrix or hover over your matrix. In the More Options, I have here Sort By, and I will choose Sum of Value. By default, it will sort by descending. If you like to sort by ascending instead, you can open the More Options again and choose on Sort Ascending. I have quite a lot of space in my page 1, which you can tell from here. I can afford to have my matrix visual to be of bigger font size. Let's explore the format options in Matrix Visual. With your matrix selected, go to the second section in your visualization pane. Then head to the Values section And over here, the font section, change the 10 to 15. Now, my values field have 15 font size, but my row header as well as my column header still remains at 10 font size. To change it, we want to collapse our value section and open the column headers section, change from 10 to 15, and do the same for row headers section. It would also be better if I rename my sum of value to expenses. It improves the readability of my visual. To rename your column, instead of the second section, we actually want to go back to the first. And over here, at the values field well, you want to right-click on sum of value. When you right-click, you have a variety of options, and at the second one, it's renamed for this visual. And also elect to double-click on your sum of value to immediately gives you the option to rename it. Let's rename it to expenses. Changes are now reflected in my matrix visual. We have 4 levels in our matrix. Let's find out under self, what are the categories or subcategories that have the highest expenses for you. Click on the plus icon to expand. I see here that Duke have spent the most for health. Let's also find out for other level 1 categories, what are the highest expenses. Collapse yourself by clicking on the minus icon and click the plus icon for asset. Duke spends the most in terms of asset in the house subcategory. Let's zoom further down in the house category. Click on the plus to expand to level 3. Duke spends the most in the utility category. Duke spends the most when it comes to internet. My matrix is currently too small to expand all the data. Let's resize it. Similar to PowerPoint or Excel, you can just resize your visuals by clicking and dragging. But my matrix is not utilizing the remaining space I have. Let's change the style of my matrix so that it's easier for me to not only read this column, but also utilize the remaining space. With your matrix selected, go to the second section in the visualization pane. Then go to Layout and Style Presets. Within it, you have a drop-down called Layout. Open it and choose Tabular. Now, instead of only a single column, my 4 levels of category is now displaying as 4 separate columns. I can now tell where does asset start and where does self start. But it would be more convenient if I can have all of the level 1 wording repeats itself down the row. So by toggling on repeat row headers. Now my matrix is behaving similar to a table. I can see all of the rows if I expand it. Now, what is the advantage of using matrix if it's going to look like a table? It's primarily in the levels in the hierarchy. Here we have 4 levels to the rows field well. You can understand it as 4 levels in the hierarchy. In the matrix visual, when you hover over or select the visual, you will have access to these icons on top. Let's pay attention to the first and the 4th icon. The first icon is called Drill Up. Now my data is displaying all 4 levels. By clicking on the Drill Up icon, I can have it display only 3. Again, clicking it, only 2 levels. And again, clicking it, only 1 level. This is possible if you are using a matrix visual and not a table visual. That's the first icon, drill up. What about the fourth? Recall earlier, if we like to expand any one of the level 1 category, we have to manually click on the plus icon. Which means if there are 5 level 1 items, we have to click it 5 times. We can immediately expand all 5 items to level 2 if we click on this fourth icon. If you hover over it, it says expand all down 1 level in the hierarchy. Let's click on it. Now I see all of level 2, again all of level 3, and again all of level 4. If you know how to use this icon, you no longer have to manually click on plus or minus yourself, which makes our plus and minus icon redundant. Let's disable it. With your matrix visual selected, go to the second section and open the row headers section. You'll have to scroll down a little when you expanded the row headers section. Within it, there is a second subsection called plus/minus icons. It's toggled on. You want to toggle it off. Now, I no longer see my plus and minus icon, which is redundant if I utilize my icons here on top, namely, drill up and expand all down 1 level in hierarchy. Another thing that makes my matrix hard to read are these totals. I do not need to know the totals for level 4. We can disable it by again going to the format options. Let's collapse our row headers and open up our row subtotals. We don't want to immediately toggle it off, as we still want to see the grand total of the entire matrix visual. Let's open it and toggle on per row level, which would give us access to this drop-down, allowing us to choose level 4 and toggle off show subtotal. Now I no longer see total in my level 4 column, but I still see it at my level 3 column. I also don't need to see it at that level or level 2. So let's disable it for both level 3, toggle off show subtotal, and also toggle it off for level 2. Now if I scroll all the way down of my matrix, I'm seeing total 48,000. We can change the name of the total row here to grand total. Go to your level 1 and over at the subtotal label, type in grand total. Instead of total, I'm seeing grand total for my total row. It would be great if I know my grand total at the very top of my matrix instead of having to scroll down to the end every single time. We can have it displayed at the top by going to the Layout and Style preset section. Let's choose Outline. Now my grand total is displaying on the top. With this matrix visual, not only do I know the grand total expenses, I also know under each level of the category which are of the highest expenses. But my data, if you go to table view, also have the date column. Let's find out in Duke's expenses, what are his expenses for each month in the year 2025. In your report view, the first section in your visualization pane, we still have this columns field where we want to bring in a month field. If you have your date column loaded as date data type in Power BI, it will automatically gives you access to date hierarchy, which you can Find by clicking on this expand icon. Check the date hierarchy. It's now being brought to rows field well instead of the columns field well. Just drag and drop the date into the columns field well. I don't need to see the quarter or the date. We will only include year and month. So I have a new input in my columns field well. I'm not seeing any changes to the column headers in my matrix visual. We will have to perform expansion down the level. Notice here we have drill on rows. We want to change this to drill on columns. Once you have it as drill on columns, click on the fourth icon. In all of the months from January all the way to December. Our matrix now is a little bit small to expand all the data. Let's reduce the font size to 12. Go into your second section, open values, and change 15 to 12 and do the same for column headers and row headers. I'm still not seeing my data displaying fully. Let's turn it down a notch to 10 font size. And I'm also seeing two subtotal columns, one for year and another one for the month column. Let's disable one of them. Go to your column subtotal section. Enable per column level and choose month. Then toggle off show subtotal. Okay, with this, we know the expenses of Duke across the different months. We see here at September, he spent 4,000 plus for self, health, and clinic. And then in June, he spent 3,000 plus for self, health, and hospital. It would be great if all of the high values are highlighted in red. We can do so by utilizing conditional formatting. Make sure to select your matrix visual before we apply the conditional formatting. You may sometimes find it hard to select your matrix visual when it's occupying so big of a space. You can click on the scroll bar. Clicking on the scroll bar almost always select the matrix visual. Once you have it selected, right-click on the expenses column, and here you have conditional formatting. Click on background color. You don't need to change anything. Our format style, which is gradient, is already the style that we want to use. The only thing we need to change is the color of our highest value. From blue, change it to red. Click on OK. Now, my matrix are highlighting all of the high values in Duke's expenses. Let's scroll down to find if there's anything towards the bottom of our matrix visual which are high in expenses. Seems like Duke in August he spent on computers about 2,000 plus. Then for his car repairs in January he spent about 1,000. By using the columns field well and conditional formatting, we are able to find out Duke's expenses across the different months and the different categories, as well as highlighting the high expenses across those different categories. Let's find out the specific date that Duke spent all of these money. To do that, we need to bring in a table visual. Let's create some space for our table visual. I'm going to reduce the height. Then make sure you are not selecting your matrix visual. You can do so by clicking on any of the blank spaces. Now click on the table visual and bring in all of the columns, level 1 to 4, payment method, values, and date. I like my date to be at the front instead. So I'm going to click and drag to the front. And instead of seeing it as date hierarchy, I want to just see it as a date. Right click on the date hierarchy and choose the option date. Now, instead of seeing my date in 4 different columns, I'm only seeing it in 1. But I'm not used to seeing my date in this format. We can change it by going to the second section in the visualization pane, and instead of Visual tab, we want to go to General tab. Click on General tab. And over at this Data Format section, make sure you are selecting Date for your Apply Settings too. And for the format, let's choose this one. Third option from the bottom. Now my date is a lot shorter and easier for me to interpret as I'm used to this date format. You can choose other date formats by exploring your options in the drop-down. I want my table to be at the bottom of the page instead. Let's click and drag it down. Sometimes it can be difficult for you to click and drag a table visual. In cases like that, I will just expand it all the way down and using the top line, I will collapse it all the way down as well. Let's have our date sorted ascending by clicking once on the date column at my table visual. Okay, let's find out on what date did Duke spend the 4,000 for cleaning. Clicking on the 4,558 value, we see that the appearance of our matrix and table change. Cross-filtering is being applied here. It cross-filter to our table visual, showing us that these expenses took place on the 30th of September across 2 different transactions. If we click on Self-Health Hospital, it shows us that this transaction took place on the 3rd of June over 1 transaction. Scroll further down and click on the August computer expenses. It took place between the 16th to the 21st over 3 transactions. Okay. Now I'm able to tell at which particular date did Duke expended the different categories expenses. But one thing becomes hard for me to tell now. If I like to know what are the distribution of Duke's expenses across the different level 1 categories, I would have to utilize this drill out. Every single time, if I want to find out the level 1 expenses distribution, I will have to drill all the way up to level 1. Then drill all the way down if I like to know the details. It would be great if we have another visual whose sole purpose is to show us the distribution of expenses by level 1. We will do so by bringing in a column chart. Instead of going to the first section and click on this second icon, which is your stack column chart, we'll do something different. I want you to select your matrix visual. Right-click on it and choose the option Copy Visual. Once you have copied your visual, make sure to click away from your matrix on any of the blank spaces on the page. With your matrix deselected, click on the option Paste which is available in your Home tab. By pasting, we have an identical copy of our matrix visual. We want to move it to the top. Reduce the height, and let's reduce the height of our matrix as well, so that they all have even amount of height and also some space on top. Leave some blank spaces here so that your drill up and expand or down one level icon will display on top. If there isn't enough space on top of visual, it will be shown down here instead. Okay, now that we have an identical copy of our matrix, I want to show you what happens if you have your matrix selected and you click on any of the visual options. So select your copied matrix and click on this second step column chart. By doing so, it will immediately transform your copied matrix visual into that particular visual you have chosen. That is why we must always click away in the blank spaces of your page if you do not like the new visual to override your current ones. Okay, remember, with this visual, we want to find out the distribution of expenses across level 1. It is currently displaying by month. We don't want it by month, so let's remove the date, year, month field in the x-axis field well. We also don't need level 2, 3, and 4. Now, I only see my level 1 expenses. Let's beautify our column chart, or rather improve the readability. Let's remove these titles, as I already know what it serves by the name on top. To your second section, over the x-axis section, toggle off title. We'll do the same for our y-axis. Now let's find out the distribution of the expenses in January. Click on January. When we do so, although it affects the column chart on top, it's hard for us to interpret the data. It's cross-highlighting the January portion of the column chart. We don't want it to cross-highlight. We want it to cross-filter. We can do so by selecting our matrix visual, then go to your Format tab. In this Format tab, you have access to edit interactions. If you do not see your Format tab, you are not selecting your matrix visual, as this Format tab will only show up if you're selecting at least one of your visual. Let's toggle edit interactions on. When you click on this, other visuals apart from matrix will give you these 3 selections. This stands for cross-highlight, which is currently the mode of interaction between matrix and column chart. We want to choose this option instead, which is cross-filter. Click on that icon. You will know that the filter option is chosen if your cross-highlight looks like this. Toggle off your edit interactions. If you still have your January selected, you will notice that the amount here should total up to about the amount at 3,000. It would be easier if we have data labels for the different columns. Select your column chart and go to your Format Your Visual section. Over at this Data Labels section, just toggle it on. Now I'm able to tell the values of my individual columns. Instead of January, Let's click on March. You can see that Duke spends the most for self in March. I'm going to collapse my visualization pane and data pane so that we can have an easier time looking at our data. Let's click on April. In April, Duke spends the most for asset. In May, for self. In June, self. In July, asset again. August, asset. September, self. October, asset. Self and self. Most of the time, or rather most of the months, Duke is spending on either self or asset, at least when it comes to most of his spendings. Let's say I have my December selected. I'd like to find out the particular dates that Duke have spent on self. I can either scroll down my table now to find all of the self level 1, or I can apply 2 filters to my table visual. So you want to hold your control key. It's important that you hold your control key first and then click on the self column. With this, it will bring both the December filter and the self filter into your table visual. If you do not click on the control button, if you do not hold your control button and then click on any of the column, there's 2 possibilities. Either it will cancel your cross filter, or let's say I choose December again and click on self. It's not filtering my data to both December and self. By holding the control button and clicking on the columns, it will continue to apply your chosen filter to the remaining visuals. Now it seems Duke in December has spent a lot of self across different dates. Maybe let's find out about his other instead. His other categories have much lesser expenses. But if I hold my control button and choose other, I'm now seeing both the self and other category. We want to exclude the self. Hold your control button and click on the self column. Now we only see the other column in the table visual. Seems like in terms of other column, Duke have spent for birthday, gift, and celebration in December. As is normal for December since it's year end and there's a lot of celebration. Okay, now that we have answered the question on the distribution of expenses across level 1, let's recap today's video's learning. We learned about bringing in Excel workbook data by clicking on this icon in your Home tab. We also learned about Power Query Editor. Let's access your Power Query Editor by clicking on this Transform Data icon. In Power Query Editor, we learned about 3 data transformation, changing the type of your column, renaming your columns, and remove irrelevant columns. After close and apply and have our data loaded into Power BI, we learned how to change the name of our tables. Afterward, we explored the matrix visual, which is found here. Matrix visuals have 3 different field well. We explored using the row field well which category have the highest expenses by using the more options in matrix visual and sort by expenses, sort descending. We also learn how to rename our values by right-clicking on it and choose rename for this visual, or double-clicking on it to highlight the entire wording and replace it. Then, having our date hierarchies year and month in the columns field well, we are able to explore Duke's data across different months. In the matrix visual, we also utilize drill up and expand all down one level in hierarchy to understand Duke's data at only level 1, level 2, 3, and all the way until 4. We utilize conditional formatting to find out the highest values in Duke's expenses across the different months and categories. When it comes to determining the exact date the expenses took place, we utilize a table visual and the cross-filtering feature in Power BI to find out across how many transactions and at which particular dates did one matrix cell's expenses took place. When we only have the matrix and the table visual, we ran into a problem of finding out the distribution of expenses across the level 1 categories. So we added in a column chart, which we formatted to exclude the x-axis title and the y-axis title, and rely only on the title of the visual to explain the purpose of it. Now, when we cross-filter in the matrix, not only are we seeing the particular dates, if we cross-filter only at the month, we are able to see the distribution of expenses at that particular month at level 1. But before we are able to achieve this, we learn about edit interaction, which by selecting the matrix visual, we have access to the Format tab. And in the Format tab, we toggle on Edit Interactions and choose the cross-filter function for the column chart. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.